Right, let's go ahead and get started. All right, welcome everybody to the 2023 Business Technology Symposium. First, I want to thank our sponsors for this event. Without their support of Steve and Cindy Tarr and Mike and Amy Dreher, this event would not be possible. Let's take a minute and say thank you to Steve, Cindy, Mike, and Amy. The theme of this year's symposium is Information Systems, the Backbone of Business. And I must admit that I had a title and it kind of wasn't very good, and ChatGPT helped me make it better. So anyways, not ashamed to admit that I use it. My name is Robert Crossler. I am the department chair of the Management, Information Systems, and Entrepreneurship department, and I will be the MC of the event today. I'm joined by three people who will speak to the role of information systems and the role that it plays throughout the business community. So at the conclusion of the panel, there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions of our panelists. So as you're listening and thinking about things today, prepare some of those questions and think about what they might be. I was asked to do a public service announcement for those of you that are here to get amplifier credit, to make sure you scan out as you leave, and then the amplifier credit will automatically be applied to your account. So if that's you, keep that in mind as you're leaving today. So with that,
so Andrew Bearly, I'm based in the Seattle area now, graduate of WSU in international business. I keep forgetting years. I think it was 2014 now. So the pathway to right now, I graduated in international business 2014, give or take a year. I'm pretty sure 2014, and went into some entrepreneurship. Did a venture in Europe with a friend, starting some business opportunity around tourism with some hostel agencies out of Belgium and Germany. It was good fun, but decided to come back to WSU, and I did my MBA with a Dr. Mauricio Featherman. If any of you are a student of him, he's a fantastic human being. Came back, did my MBA. And focused on analytics. So I think I needed a little bit more in the way of some skills. We'll probably talk about that a little bit more later. And from there, I said yes to an opportunity to do somewhat of a graduate internship at the Office of Commercialization, Salesforce implementation. Leaving WSU, that moved me into a space where I was doing some data management for a time in the financial industry, doing systems integration, largely around Salesforce and some CRM implementations, before being recruited by Slalom Consulting, which is where I'm at now. Been working for Slalom for over 6 years, doing data integration to start. So stitching systems together across enterprises, making them talk together, making systems kind of a holistic ecosystem of data, I guess if you could put it that way. And then more recently, over the last 3 years, moved into the intelligent automation space. So working around process automation, a focus of taking business processes out of accounting, finance, HR, and looking, obviously from a value perspective, looking for optimization opportunities to automate business process. And that's also kind of snowballed into some new technology around process mining. So focus on abstracting data out of these large workflow management systems. And then we look for value. We look for ways to optimize the processes, look for ways to modernize the systems, and a lot of automation comes out of that too. So that's the long and the short of it.
I think that's my cue to go next. So good afternoon. Happy to be here. And thank you for tuning in if you're on Zoom. My name is Jasmyn Bearly, and I graduated from WSU in 2017 from the MIS program. And I have been working at Boeing ever since. And I've had a variety of roles while at Boeing, from things like cloud operations to working on international IT projects. And then I found my way over into cybersecurity. So I'm currently a product security engineer, working, across the enterprise, but really focused on supporting government programs. So helping to secure the software that actually goes onto Boeing products, whether that's an airplane, a satellite, or a rocket. So exciting stuff. And what kind of led me there was I kind of intentionally switched from business to IT to cybersecurity, just because I felt that I wanted to grow my technical skills. And I really saw a gap in the folks who are in technical fields really understanding the business side. So coming from an MIS major, it was a good bridge to get across the gap. There we go. And then cybersecurity is obviously a growing need. So, pursued that avenue. So that's also the long and short of it.
Great. Thank you, Jasmyn. Jason?
All right. I'm the token vandal on the panel. So I graduated from the University of Idaho in 2000, 4 years ago, with a degree in MIS out of the business college. At that time, there was a phenomenon called the dot-com bust. Ask your parents about it. But all these companies that were startups and whatnot in Silicon Valley, their investment went away and the market was flooded with workers. And so I got my degree and I thought for sure I'd be moving to Seattle or the Bay Area or Salt Lake City. I wanted to stay in the West, but didn't work out because no one was hiring. Ironically, a year before, had several people, companies try to get me to quit school to go work for them because business was booming that fast. So that being said, I caught on in a programming job at the University of Idaho, where I stuck around and moved in different roles for 18 years. And then the last 4 years, or towards the end of that, I implemented CRM Microsoft Dynamics for the fundraising part of the University of Idaho. Was the project manager on that. Turned out that when that project successfully finished, I started talking with some colleagues at Schweitzer, and they were about to implement and choose a CRM. So they picked a CRM. They also picked me up, and I implemented Salesforce, and now I manage the Salesforce implementation and team of technical workers that work on that at Schweitzer Engineering.
Great. Thank you, Jason. So with those introductions out of the way, I'd like to jump into kind of what our topic is. And I'd like to start by asking you to share examples of how you interact with various business functions and what those interactions look like. So Jasmyn, start with you.
All right. Well, I feel like no matter where you are, big company, small company, you will have to interact with multiple business functions across the organization. Particularly for a company like Boeing, I feel like you can't get anything significant done unless you do interact with different organizations, since people are so specialized. But to give a couple of examples, especially in my area, if you're working on a contract proposal, say to the DoD, you would work with several different engineering functions that would, draft up what they would estimate that they think they can do, to reach the contract proposals goals. And then that would also need to be referenced with finance, make sure that your estimates are correct. You're working with legal as you're drafting up your contract. And then, of course, consulting with the cybersecurity folks on the security requirements as well. So that's just one example. In my day-to-day, I do a lot with software engineering, which is a separate function than product security. But we also interface a lot with, again, finance and, business representatives as well.
Real quick, Jasmyn, what does DoD stand for?
Department of Defense.
Thank you. So working with governmental contractors probably provides a little bit of bureaucracy that you have to deal with.
Very much so, yeah.
Jason?
I first read this question, I thought, oh, business functions, is that like the after hours event that we're doing after this? And for introverts like myself, that's a really big challenge to get out there and talk to people. But I think one of your roles in your job is to understand the big picture. You're going to have requests that come into your office independent of what you work on, where people are going to say, I want this software to do this thing specifically for my area because it'll make us faster, bigger, stronger, make us more money. And it's your job to understand that, well, that may work out great for that area, but you have to understand that, HR or an engineering shop or the support shop, it could be a detriment to them. And so it's really a job to ask questions and make sure that you're aware of the other business functions that are going on within your organization. The data's out there. You'll get hit in the head all day long with data. It's really up to you to synthesize and understand what's going on, and hopefully leadership that gives direction and provides the big picture overview so that you can make sure that it's not just great for the silo shop, but great for everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think I'll start that answering this question by kind of defining that when you leave it. So I work a lot of times with IT, right? So in the arm of consulting that I'm doing, it's very much technology focused. From an IT perspective, they talk about everything that's not IT as just the business. It's used as just this very amorphous term of the business. What does the business mean? And so if you're going into a more technology focused role, you'll probably hear that almost immediately. You'll hear people just refer to the business. And the business really just means anyone who's in some type of function that's helping to support the outcomes of that organization, either from an operational perspective, like HR or accounting, finance, those different functional parts, like the cogs in the machine, right, that help run the business, or the business itself, right, like engineering, right, for Boeing, engineers help create the product, right? And then you have people on the floor that are assembling the product. Those people actually help generate the product and they help generate revenue, right? So that is the business, and it's very difficult to define that a lot of times. And it's very industry specific, and it's very specific to specific companies, right? The way that they define those things. So I'm confusing you first before I answer that question, but I do just want to outline that, from my perspective, we oftentimes work with just what we call the business. And so oftentimes where I am, it's usually working with that operational side. So we're working with folks in legal to understand the legal processes, understand opportunities to automate different legal functions. We're working with sales to help them understand, right, the processes around, what we call, lead to cash, this process of generating leads and then, selling things. We work with accounting in automating some of their processes and just understanding kind of the basic functions. Finance, HR is the one that we're starting to work with quite a bit to understand, some of those optimizations we can create along, from when a person gets their job requisition, right? You've interviewed for a job to when you retire from that job, or maybe you leave for other reasons, but that's a whole process, and there's a lot of little processes in between. So I work with in my role, I work with a lot of different parts of the business, mostly operational parts of the business. Go on about. Then there's also the consulting side, which is we have our own business of consulting. That kind of looks like going out. We have consultants kind of wear multiple hats, both in selling roles and then also in delivering our services. But mostly outside of just the consultants, the people in our business, we are the business. In the consulting, I am the business, right? We're the ones that generate the revenue for the organization. And then we usually work with, folks in accounts receivable, to build out purchase orders, do all the invoicing, all that stuff for the services that we provide. So anyways, that's a lot of different answers, but that's the general gist of it.
I think you guys just hit on maybe every major that we have at the College of Business. So, all right. So speaking of business and what you guys are doing in business, and whoever wants to jump in here first can, what do you see as some of the key challenges that businesses face today? So our students are about to go out into the business world. What are some of those challenges that you're seeing that businesses are are facing?
I'll kick us off. So something that's not new, but that's still a challenge is that businesses are facing an aging population. So a lot of the people, especially at Boeing, who have held a lot of expertise are retiring. And so it's leaving a huge knowledge gap. And so as, new employees, recent grads are starting, you may find that maybe a lot of the senior expertise is leaving, and you might have very short ramp up periods to be able to synthesize the knowledge before they're out the door. And I also think that businesses are facing updated expectations from the people entering the workforce. So providing a little bit more flexible work arrangements and that kind of thing, especially with virtual work and things left over from the pandemic. So just one thing that business is facing.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I was going to say, I'm sure you're all familiar with the pandemic that just happened. And in Schweitzer, we went from full offices to sparse offices because everyone had most people had flexible working arrangements. What we saw with that was the advent of Zoom or Teams or Blue Jeans, whatever, communications device that people use for meetings, but you missed that interaction. And it actually, as people came back to the office, it was awkward. People had to relearn how to interact with someone. It's funny, but it really was the case, as people didn't know how to talk in the same room or filling up the cup of coffee next to one another. I think that's an issue. I also think that gone are the days, again, I'm the old guy up here. Gone are the days where someone works for one company for 30 years and then retires. I think, especially with the pandemic, what we're seeing is that we had a lot of people leave because they got offers to work remotely. And we had to be nimble and flexible. And so we have semi-remote work as an option at Schweitzer. But for someone that always wants to work out of their home, there's going to be companies out there that are going to hire you to do that. And if you're, if that's your cup of tea and you can be thorough in what you do, stay on task at home, that's a great opportunity. But for businesses that want employees in the office to communicate and have group meetings together, it's tough to recruit people to that environment or compete with a entirely remote campus. So I think that's tough, both employee retention of technical people or all people, and competing with those remote workers.
Yeah, I'll echo that really quick, because I think fundamentally, and we're seeing this at our organization, and I think I just see this in a lot of places, is companies are struggling with their culture, right? Because a lot of their culture is defined around people meeting each other. And if you can't be in the same room at the same time, and you can't know the person that you sit next to about their kids and about which trips that they're going on and all the other stuff that, creates human interaction, it's really difficult to foster culture. And it's difficult to have these large company events where we kind of set the tone for the type of people that leadership, are and the expectations that they have about the company's, vision and the attitude towards the world, all that kind of good stuff. And that's a lot of culture creation, right? And different companies have different types of cultures. So I think companies are all trying to figure out who they are right now from a culture perspective, because I will say that at Slalom, we had a very specific type of culture. And we are struggling to figure out what that looks like moving forward in this virtual workforce. And I work for a lot of my clients, and they're all saying the same things. Like, we were this way and now we're not really sure what we are anymore. So that's really something that's being defined right now. Why do you care? I would say, as you're interviewing for jobs, you're asking people, what's your company culture like? They might really struggle to answer that question, or they might give you what seems like a really fluffy or not real answer. And that's probably because they don't know. But maybe they do, and maybe they're doing things to work on it. So yeah, I think culture is a big thing.
Thank you, guys. So in the midst of these challenges, technology is something that always advances, right? There's things I'm talking about today that I had no clue I was going to be talking about 5 years ago, 2 years ago. So as technology is advancing and changing, How do you see that as changing how the business operates?
Yeah, I mean, we can go back to virtual work. That's going to change. It already has, and it will continue to change everything about how the speed of business, some things are actually speeding up. People are just more efficient through some processes, just moving process along and becoming, automation fits a lot better in a virtual workforce than it does in a very people-focused workforce, create more structure around process. I'll just hit on the elephant in the room. Generative AI is going to change a lot of things. We're just right at the beginning of trying to understand how it's going to affect business. I think most people don't really understand it that much, so they're not really sure how it will affect their organizations. But I think you all as students are, interestingly enough, probably on the forefront of a lot of utilization of the technology. You're trying to get ChatGPT to write papers for you and stuff, which, creating efficiencies for yourself. But interestingly enough, I think you'll be surprised when you go into the workforce how few people have ever touched it, right? They don't understand the capabilities that it has to create a lot more efficiency. And that's not about removing work. It just means that, just like you didn't have to remember everything because you have Google now to tell you and externalize all of your information. Now ChatGPT's it's just going to mean that more work is expected of you. Your output should be higher. So I think those are a few of the things that are definitely going to be changing a lot.
I'll piggyback on that. It's not going to be whether or not you use ChatGPT or GPT other programs. It's going to be how it's up to you to figure out how to utilize that best for your role in the company. Just a very brief aside. There was an interview that happened at Schweitzer Engineering a couple of weeks ago, and they happen all the time, but it was a remote interview, and we were reasonably sure that they were answering the questions using their phone and GPT software. Know that the people on the other end, the interviewers, went and asked all the same questions of GPT after the interview and said, that matches, that matches, that matches. And so it's not just a tool for students, it's a tool for everyone. I personally, I'm really looking forward to some of the GPT devices will write our test code for us, which was kind of laborious and took a lot of time. And you can just put in a few parameters and there's your test code, and you just saved yourself 2 hours to go find other work. But still, yeah, it's really exciting. One thing to learn is, when Rob and I were in school, we were colleagues, our colleagues went to school together. We were talking ahead of time. We learned on Visual Basic and C. There was no sharp or plus sign after it. It was just C. And we knew at the time this was not going to be the only language we're going to learn. It's a lifelong. Your degree program, it's a lifelong learning. You're going to have to learn what's the next thing, whether it's Python or Ruby or Rails or Java or whatever. And I hope you like to learn, because that doesn't stop. You have to keep up with the Joneses. So.
Yes, I will just echo what my fellow panelists have said, but also not just ChatGPT. I think automation in general will be the disruptive force that will change business and is changing how business operates. And it behooves you as a student to say, what do I bring to the table? What can I do that is different than, what somebody can automate? And I think that goes back to really understanding the why. Why are you doing something? What are the business objectives that we're trying to achieve? So that, automation is really augmenting our work. And it's removing a lot of the tedious, repetitive work. And it's the value added, really focusing on the why that I think is something that students can think about and really bring to the table today.
Right. So what I heard there is technology. You're seeing a lot of different places where it's changing. It's new things that are coming on board. And as organizations bring on these new technologies, what are some of the mistakes that you've seen? Can you give examples maybe of some mistakes you've seen as new technology has tried to be brought into the organizations?
I think the decision makers will a lot of times will go to a conference or see some new technology, and they say, I don't know how that's going to fit in, but I want it. I know I want it. I've worked with some instances where the software is already purchased without any kind of a vetting process, and then it's like, here, go install it, go fix it, go integrate it. And those are some of the worst challenges. And so you need to make sure that you have a good communication between all parts of the organization. Some of the best ideas come from the bottom, and sometimes they come from the top too. So, but yeah, those are some of the worst things that I've seen is purchase of software that, doesn't integrate at all, but it's already cost, and you're going to make it work because, or that's what they're familiar with. I mean, there's lots of different reasons. So that's a pretty big mistake I've seen time and time again. So open communication helps keep that from happening.
So let me get a little specific. So the decision makers, you would say, are who would those decision makers been? When you say the decision makers go and buy it, who would that be?
People with the budget.
Okay. The people with the money go out and they spend it.
That's right. They go to a conference and they talk to salespeople. And of course, salespeople say that my software can do everything you need it to do twice as fast, and you don't need anybody to install it, maybe 10 minutes.
Okay. And so then you suggest that there be more communication, more people talking. Who are the people that should be talking? It should be, the people with money should come talk to you, the programmer, or who are those conversations between?
Well, in a perfect world, there'd be a process that they have to go through, that they can't just buy software, that they have to go to a committee and they get funds approved. And sometimes the software already exists. For some of the places I worked on campus, there was already a contract with that software company, and someone signed another second contract at a higher price for the same software. And so there needs to be a process, and people need to be involved, not just the top of the process, but the bottom, so that when the salespeople say, we've had implementations that only take 2 days, that a real person that's going to be doing the implementation can look at it and say, no, this is actually a couple of months worth of work. But there's other things we have to do to integrate the systems. I mean, really that flow of communication is paramount and very important to the process. So.
Thank you. Their thoughts on that one?
I would echo what you just said. I would boil that down to stakeholder buy-in. So including the executive leadership to the implementers to the people who are actually going to use the system or software. The projects that have failed miserably that I've been a part of did not have that stakeholder buy-in. And it was usually an executive who bought a shiny thing and then didn't, really consult or think about the implementation of the software, the system. And so it really gets held up in that piece, as well as, I would say, the change management portion of it. You can really know all the technical details of how do you integrate it with your other systems. But if you don't think about the human aspect, how are people going to be impacted by this change? How does that interrupt their day-to-day? And how do you kind of influence and get them on your side to start using this new thing? I think those are the three ways that most commonly make a project fail.
Yeah, when I read this question, I thinking along the lines on the same things. Consultants are a big part of the problem. Obviously, we're the ones selling the dream often, along with the technology partners and really, we working with executives to think of the art of the possible, right? What's new, what's changing, what can be adapted. Don't get behind, that kind of stuff. And so, yes, I think, but I've also been a part of a lot of technology implementation and a lot of bad technology implementation. And usually I think the things that you see pretty consistently is echoing, their sentiments 100%. It's oftentimes not understanding who all the stakeholders are that touch the technology. And the difficult thing is, right, that the people who own the technology, oftentimes IT, and the people who are affected by the technology, the business, right, folks in HR or folks in sales that actually use it or it impacts their processes and their jobs, they're not collaborating and they're not talking and they have different objectives, right? And so that sounds like obviously it sounds so silly that you'd have people in the same organizations who don't have the same objectives. And that actually mostly is the case. And so getting those people to work together and align and say, right, we're doing this together. And interestingly enough, I think what we usually feel like as consultants is that we didn't get alignment far enough up the food chain, right? So that somebody who affects both the business and the people in technology has the goal in saying, you both have to play nice, do it, right? I don't care if you're not enjoying this, you both have to work together and make sure that we get this done in the right way. So, there's a whole host of reasons, and change management. Yeah. Getting things, getting people to just adopt things and use it the right way and all that stuff. That probably is where, the rubber meets the road and you see a lot of the issues.
One quick aside on change management. It's super important. I don't know how many projects I've been through where they just change the technology stack and they do the same exact business process exactly like they're used to, and they don't take an opportunity to make improvements time and time again. And they wonder if they get right down into the same mess that they had before. Take the opportunity to make it better. We have lots of values at Schweitzer, but one of them is ask why 5 times. With a bunch of engineers, that makes a lot of sense. But we always try to simplify. We always try to make things better. But don't just change it from.
I was literally just going to say that. And I think the why you care and what you can bring, and if you're talking to future employers, is ask a lot of questions. Just keep asking questions. Say things. If you're unsure of asking questions, just say, I'm going to ask what might be a stupid question, and then just ask it. Make sure that you're just asking questions. If you don't know things, just ask and ask. A lot of people are not asking questions, and that's where these problems, they all come out of just not collecting enough information.
What I think I heard you guys say is channel your inner 3-year-old. Right? I was just reflecting while you're saying that on when my kids were little. Why was the perennial question from the backseat of the car, right? All right, so we're going to change gears a little bit with our next set of questions. But before we do, I wanted to open the floor with kind of the theme of where we're at. Are there any questions from the audience that students have that they'd like to ask? We've got microphones there in the back of this front section. Angie, are you going to bring the mic to him, Angie? All right.
I'm Molly. I just wanted to ask about kind of like the biggest learning curve you've had in your career so far, whether that's with like a specific changing a system or changing a different like way you've been doing things. I guess the greatest learning curve you've had.
I can start us off. Interestingly, I think the steepest learning curve for me is how do you influence change without authority? So as an individual contributor, you'll start off without that, you aren't in charge of anybody, you don't hold the budget, but how do you, make convincing arguments to your peers, to your leadership on, why should we change, or why should we buy this thing? Why should we implement your project? And building up that skill, I think is a craft and probably still something that I'll continue to learn to this day, but maybe a little bit better as I go along. So that's what I'd say.
Public sector, I worked 18 years in higher education and then moved into the private sector at Schweitzer Engineering. Huge learning curve. Things are not the same. So you rub 2 pennies together to try to make a nickel in higher education in most places, and not to say that we just throw buckets of money away in the private sector, but it's a little easier to get some buy-in for projects. So,
yeah, each new engagement for me feels like drinking from the fire hose all over again. But I would say learning a new technology, really, like here's a technology, go pretend to be an expert in it, which is half of consulting. And then trying to learn it's like teaching the class by reading the book the night before. That's, and I would say, don't be afraid to do that. it's going to push you really hard. You're going to become really accountable, but you'll learn incredibly fast. And I would say there's been multiple situations like that, trying to learn a new technology, kind of like, reading the manual as you're flying the plane kind of thing. It's, but you'll learn, and you'll learn quick.
Great. Thank you. Good question. Any other questions? We got one back.
Also, breaking out of your shell if you're an introvert, that's tough. It's worth it, but it's tough.
My name's Caden. I kind of have a question as you guys were talking about AI and how it's being advanced. How do you think within a business that's going to kind of affect like CRM implementation? And for like the future, how do you think customer relationships will be different with AI advancing?
Well, a lot of the technical work behind the scenes, I think, has some applications that, like I brought up earlier, that we've seen some of the GPT software do. We'll write our test code. Salesforce is one of those tools that you have to have. I think it's 78% code coverage for things that you write within the program. Once you as a whole are below that, then you can't bring any new code in. And so writing that test code coverage will basically be a lot quicker. But it doesn't really, again, I don't think that GPT software is going to replace people. It's going to replace processes or do some automation. I think the people that are in danger are the ones that don't embrace new tools like GPT and figure out how to make their jobs better, more efficient, easier for the company. So Salesforce is a good example because they just had their big annual conference in San Francisco and everything was AI related. And I try not to be jaded, but they sell things before they're developed. And so they're selling how their product's going to be fantastic. And they're still putting the wheels on the airplane and they're in midair. So I think that we don't know what it's going to do. There's a lot of potential, but how big of a technology leap this is going to be, maybe in 5 years we might know.
I think short term, specifically CRM related, a lot of the processes will be streamlined and augmented with something like ChatGPT or large language models. I think customer expectations will want things quicker, more streamlined and very intuitive. And I think especially with ChatGPT functionality, that basically is like a chat bot for, somebody first, getting to know a business or learning somebody's product. I think it will be an algorithm or a bot first, and then you would engage with a person later. Yeah,
I agree. And a couple of use cases where you might see something like that streamlining is the repository of information around quotes, for instance, or different, probably a lot around sales quotes. The generation of those quotes will just happen a lot faster, right? So customers are going to expect to get a quote and a much more personalized quote very quick, right? So you used to have to go back, collect all this information around the products that they're looking for, stitching together a bunch of information. And now someone who you're still going to have to understand generally what to ask the language model, but you'll probably generate a quote really quick, right? And it'll be very personalized for the customer. It also just helps salespeople ask questions faster to this large repository of information, right? So in consulting, for example, we use a CRM, and I'll want to know, which projects have we done in healthcare around this technology with a team of 10 people, stuff like that. And it's going to give me information much, much quicker based on a lot more unstructured data that lives underneath it. So we'll see stuff like that. It's just going to make things happen faster.
Great. Thank you. Next question.
Hello, my name is Abraham. And along with the value chain system being how most businesses function nowadays, how do you implement software into that system and also identify jobs that should be done by human personnel and jobs that should be done by software?
This is worth 20 points on your exam.
So what I'm hearing is kind of what, if we look over kind of an organization, that might be difficult. As consultants, we would sell you, we'll come in and we're going to assess your organization, and we already know all the hot spots, and we do understand some good, some high value areas for adding automation. There are some cool technologies. I had mentioned earlier, process mining is something that we're working with right now, which is essentially saying, okay, here's our CRM system. We have all this information in the system about log data, essentially around how the process flows. And then we'll be able to strategically say, okay, through your process at these given points, you have a lot of repetitiveness, right? And so we'll look at those as opportunities to add, virtual workers or robots or whatever you want to call them. Human processes are very complex, really complex, and people do the same thing so many different ways. Automating human work is really like sci-fi. A lot of it is sci-fi stuff. We are very malleable, and our processes change because our environment changes so often. It's really difficult to find large scale, long chains of work that we can automate consistently. So lots of little bits of things, but probably it's going to be a while before we say, this job right here, unless, Sally or Joe is hitting this one button over and over and over, they probably already hate their life. We're going to just automate it. Right. But yeah, that's kind of where we'll look for those little pieces.
I go back to my operations management course and think about where are your bottlenecks in your business processes, and then that will usually be your focus. Whether it's probably going to be a combination of automation and applying human expertise to that. But as Andrew was saying, all of the manual, repetitive, very repeatable stuff is the low-hanging fruit that will be automated. A lot of the complex situational, type of work will remain done by people. So I think that will stay that way for a while. And then the thing I was thinking of was also value streaming. So where are you producing value, making sure you streamline that and understand your business processes. And then if you can repeat it, chances are that can be automated.
I'll throw a weird one out there. Schweitzer Engineering, if you have a technical question, you need support, you're going to talk to a person. And that's a business decision, and that's made at the highest level. And even though there are lots of software packages out there or chatbots that could be installed that people can self-serve themselves, our CEO says, no, we want to run our business like you would treat your mom, which I'm guessing all of you do tech support for your parents. So that's the kind of thing where we could automate that, or we could turn it into an AI bot, but we're choosing not to because we think that's what our customers want. And they've told us that they appreciate that they get frustrated, press 1 or 3 to go down this tree, and, eventually you can talk to a person. Nope, a person's going to answer the phone, and a person's going to transfer you with a warm transfer at Schweitzer to someone that can help you, hopefully in your geographic region of the world. So sometimes just because you can automate something doesn't mean you should. And I think there's a Jurassic Park quote in there somewhere.
All right. Any more questions?
Yeah, we have a question from our virtual audience. So Victor asks, how do you manage a business when the technology negatively affects the business?
I look at it as an opportunity. Man, can we get any lower than this? Let's go ahead and have that tough conversation and make things better. Lots of opportunity there. And it's going to be tough, but once you get there, there's a sense of ownership and you've righted the ship, and hopefully there's a promotion or two in it as well. So you'll get those. Every job isn't great. I would tell you, I'm jumping ahead questions, but a piece of advice is you're going to be a part of some really great teams. You're going to be part of some really bad teams. appreciate it when you're on a really good team because it hardly seems like work at all.
Specifically with bad technology, technology is not cheap. There's probably, license costs associated with it. So hopefully you have feedback loops in place where you're evaluating the effectiveness of technology or software or a system and say, is this worth what we're spending on it? If not, let's get rid of it or replace it. So hopefully it doesn't stick around for too long, but we all know how legacy software tends to stick around sometimes.
Yeah, I would say, the first thing that comes to mind, especially because I work a lot around process automation, so this, take it with a grain of salt, my perspective here is we find that technology, while it can create a lot of efficiency and structure, also creates a lot of fragility in business processes because it means that it's so structured that people forgot on why we did things the way that we did them, or we just forget, that certain parts of the business process happen, that they just actually happen in an automated way. And there's actually a lot more that's happening inside of there. So there can be some toxicity to adding too much technology to parts of the business. And that just takes a really deliberate understanding of, like you said, if we should add it, if we can, should we add it? And managing that, I don't know, the documentation, making sure that people have, are trained on parts of the business where technology plays in, and even if it's automated, really understanding kind of the high level of how the process kind of gets from end to end to make sure that we understand, okay, this is where the technology fits and this is where the humans fit, and just making sure to keep that level of understanding is really important, I think. Yeah.
It's a lot of projects that technology is thrown out and it's a business process issue, not a technology issue, right?
Right. Is there a question down front here?
Yeah, my name is Isaac. You guys were talking about AI and how that has like good advancements in MIS. Is there any other technologies that you see that would advance MIS as much as AI?
I don't think anything as much as AI. That will definitely be the major player in a lot of this. Just cognitive understanding of, right? Because AI, what it's really doing is helping you understand things that might be one thing or might be another, right? And that sounds like a very basic thing to say, but in the world of technology, that's the root thing, right? Is it's either this or it's this, right? It's a yes or no question, but actually a lot of times it could be two things, right? So that's what AI is really trying to help us understand, is at some level of probability. Is it this or is it this? And so much of human process is about maybe it's this or maybe it's this. And we're trying to get at an inference to what it is. So there's really nothing I think that will impact automation and technology as much as being able to make kind of judgment calls really about things. Yeah.
All right, Angie, we had a hand up here. And there's also one in the back section, middle.
Hi, my name is Mitchell, and I just wanted to ask, it's a bit more of a targeted question, but about the government's openness to use of AI, especially in business contracts. I just wanted to get a little bit more information because I think we all know that the government likes to be a little bit behind the curve because they're always very concerned, like to drag their feet on that. So I was just wondering how open in terms of DoD contracts for private businesses the government's open to the use of AI, chatbots, stuff like that.
Yeah, I haven't been a part of specific contracts that call out something like a ChatGPT, but definitely machine learning, data augmented contracts are definitely a thing. Any DoD contract would still need to abide by security requirements and compliance. So, you're not using the publicly available version of these things. It's going to be hosted in a controlled environment and trained on specific models, and a lot of care and feeding to these things. But I do think that there will be appetite for this, and it's something that I know Boeing's looking into. How can we leverage these types of things in the work that we present, not just to the government, but in commercial spaces as well.
Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say, government, obviously, and it depends on which part of government, right? The DoD versus, a city, local municipality have two very different ranges of security and compliance. There's actually a lot of areas in the private sector that are just as strict, right? Healthcare, for example, is super controlled environment. A lot of the finance industry is also a very, very controlled environment. So, and for these clients, what we're hearing a lot is that, this is great. We want to play with AI. We want to do new things. But to Jasmyn's point, it just needs to be done in our private environment, right? So we used to have this conversation of cloud versus on-prem, like on-premise, right? I think now it's public cloud versus private cloud. So everything really needs to be in that private cloud environment. But, as long as those environments are very locked down and stringent, and compliant, then I think there's a lot of curiosity from the public sector around AI. Yeah.
All right. You got more, Jason? No, you good?
Pretty much covered.
All right. Awesome. Next question.
So we have another question from our online audience that kind of follows with that. Jonah wants to know, how do you respond to advancements in technology across a multinational organization while accounting for the technological or infrastructural differences between nations?
I would say probably data compliance is the biggest difference between countries. There's going to be some things at like a computing level, right? Data centers need to be closer to physical locations just because it's faster, right? To have a data center in Sao Paulo if you live in Rio than it is to have a data center in Washington, right? You get information quicker. So there is some things that are somewhat regional. In those big public clouds, they make sure to regionalize a lot of that data processing. But the biggest things is data compliance, right? You have GDPR. I'm not even sure if I'm saying that right. But you have a lot of new data compliance regulation at a very, regional, and by regional, I mean just kind of geographically by country. And so that's a big thing, I think, that companies had to start facing, with European data regulation about, 10 years ago. And now privacy is a huge, especially at an enterprise level, right? For a large multinational company, privacy is now a big part of IT, and it used to not be a big part of IT. So that's probably, for multinational organizations, that's probably the most difficult part.
We at Schweitzer, we have offices all over the world. And where we can, we standardize on software packages where we can. We do have some examples. There's one package in our Brazil office that is specific to opportunities and sales and quotes and whatnot. It's specific to Brazil because they add extra, we'll just say government taxes onto it. And it's very specific to the country of Brazil that isn't replicated within Salesforce. But we're looking at how do we integrate that? How do we move forward? We don't want to support, no IT shop wants to support every color of different software under the rainbow. We just want something that we can keep our hands around and is secure. And so when we try to go out and purchase software, that's one of the questions is how is this going to work in a worldwide environment? So, and then, keeping track of all the different rules and regulations that each country has, whether it's with the data on-prem or in the country or without. It's just a lot to keep track of. We have a whole office that does that. So
I would say more generally that a business should approach any new technology cautiously optimistic. Definitely do their due diligence to evaluate whether it's something that makes sense for the business to pursue. Can it create the value that, the hype cycle has kind of promised? And at least for Boeing, we have teams that focus on doing proof of concepts and evaluating, innovative technologies. And then at the end of the day, they'll say things like, yes, this is something that we should pursue, or no. Businesses should also be wary that they don't get distracted at every single new turn, especially as innovation happens at a quicker pace more and more.
I will say there are software packages that will do exactly what you want it to do, but the Schweitzer, we've turned them down because they were created or owned in a country that we don't choose to do business with. It happens.
Great. More questions? Angie, we also you're done up back there.
How do you think you could combat people using AI maliciously in a business?
Are you talking like an insider threat type of thing?
Yeah, like someone inputting malicious information or false information to throw it off your processes.
So if you're implementing AI in your company, something like a ChatGPT specifically, you would want to make sure that you have controls in place to prevent something like that. So those are usually like injection attacks, that there are things that you can specifically do to help secure your AI model type of thing. But also you would want to make sure that you have a good insider threat program in place, or something that would catch something malicious like that. And then follow up as soon as you can is the best advice I would give.
Monitoring, have a very selective process to vet software, do least amount of access per user, and so you don't give someone more permissions than what they need. A couple other things.
Yeah, this isn't my area of expertise, but access is always most. Some of the big enterprise clients I'm working with right now, they're trying out, they have their own chat GPT, SOP chat on their virtual private cloud. So it's their little version of chat, and access is the big thing. It's like you only get access if you've been vetted and approved by the data science team. And so they know exactly who's touching the system, and it's a very small group of people. So I would say, I don't know. Yeah. Access.
Attribution. We saw that Joe Bob made this change here on this day, and then our AI model acted really funny. I wonder why, type of thing.
Great. Next question. I think we got one down here, Angie. These two are fighting over who gets to ask the next question.
Hello, I'm Rylan. I feel like a lot of people are asking about AI and technology, but I wanted to ask more about the business standpoint. So when solving issues in MIS, is it more important to have a good team? Because you mentioned there are bad teams. Is it better to have a good team or to better understand the technology at hand?
Can you have both?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. My consulting answer is anybody can learn the technology. If the team doesn't work well together, you're dead on arrival. So yeah, I would say, put backed into a corner. Most people can learn most technologies, and they can actually learn a lot really fast on the fly. Having technology expertise just makes things happen faster, right? Because you know which corners to look around, you know what's coming, you solve problems before they even happen, right? But it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just usually means that it takes a little bit longer and it's a little bumpier. But if the team's not working together, then that's just something that usually doesn't fix itself unless someone from management just comes down hard, right? So, yeah, I would say team is probably the most important thing. That's my perspective.
Agreed.
Team.
Consensus.
Hi, I'm Brian. My question's not very cerebral. It's more of a personal one. But what software or system is your personal favorite to work with?
It's what I'm using now with Salesforce, and you can see me. I'll sign you up with a contract after. No, it's funny. I'm sure you've heard the phrase, if you love what you're doing, you never work a day in your life. Since I've started working on Salesforce software, it's kind of a breath of fresh air. It's not for everyone. There's a lot of GUI interfaces instead of hardcore Apex programming, but you can do both if you want. But I love it. I kind of like the goofy characters they have. But you can Google it.
Salesforce is like a cult.
Yeah, they hire former Disney employees to make their characters, and so they have like a dozen. Anyways, I really like Salesforce. It's kind of like, oh man, what a breath of fresh air. I love this new technology. So
I don't know if it's because it's new and therefore like shiny and exciting, but I've been playing around with Relevance AI, which is large language model similar to a ChatGPT, but it's a no-code solution. So you don't have to learn a coding language, and you can just plop in what you want the model to learn and start asking it questions. And there you go. Like within a minute, you have something working.
I would, my favorite software is the one that I cut my teeth with the most for the longest time. So it's more like a personal thing, and that's Dell Boomi, which I'm sure none of you have ever heard of. Maybe. Salesforce has a somewhat similar technology that they bought called MuleSoft. I've also worked in MuleSoft, and it's also great. I like Boomi more, but that's my personal preference of working in it for a long time. So, it's that tool where you're the most comfortable in it. So it feels like, you're just playing Legos, right? You kind of have all your little pieces and you're putting things together and you're building stuff. That's what I like the most. But then again, that's a very personal thing. Yeah.
Great. Well, let's pivot to my questions, and we'll come back to your questions here in a minute. So I think that question actually parlays us nicely to where we're going. So one of the things that as I talk to students is one of those scary moments is I'm finishing my degree and someone's hired me. What does that look like? So as you whether through your own experiences or through what you have observed in bringing on freshly minted college graduates, how do you engage with people, in that first day, week, month that they start in a position?
Orientation is way longer than you realize. But yeah, I think it goes back. We talked earlier about asking questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. No one's going to expect you to hit the ground running and just immediately contribute. You're an investment for the company. They're investing in you. They hired you. They want you to succeed. They're going to give you the tools, and they're going to be around. I have an intern. He graduates from WSU, computer science, this December. And when I first brought him on, every 5 minutes, hey Jason, how should I, what should I, and I give him a little guidance, and then less and less and less. And I also set boundaries, said, from this time to this time, I need you to use Google, use your tools, struggle. Really, you need to struggle in your job. It sounds harsh, but then when you overcome it, you're that much better of an employee. So again, it's hugely expensive to interview people, to fly you in, to hire you, to get your picture taken on a badge. It's an investment. They want you to succeed, so don't be afraid to ask questions. They want to make sure that you're a critical thinker, that you're a problem solver. And that's how you can provide value to the company. Everyone does things a little bit different. So you got to figure out whether it's Boeing or Slalom or Schweitzer or whatever. How do they do things? And then learn that and go forward.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think of the Chris Pratt meme that's like, at this point, I don't know what's going on and I'm too afraid to ask. Don't be that person. You never know when that specific thing's going to come up again, and don't look like a fool later because you didn't ask the question. No matter what you do, there's always going to be something that you don't know. And no amount of preparation you can do in your undergrad is going to prepare you for that. So know that you're going to be learning, you're going to be drinking from a fire hose. And that's something that I came to terms with as well was the company expects you to not know everything, and they expect that you'll be learning. All that they want from you is, positive attitude, somebody who's willing to learn. So as long as you have that, you can really go in here.
Yep. Ditto. all that, my go-to, and like I said before, as a consultant, I have to ask questions all the time that people think is common knowledge, but it's not to me because I've never been a part of this organization. And I, just say, this might sound like a stupid question, and then it kind of always disarms people a little bit. They say, oh no, it's definitely not a stupid question. Great question. Make sure you just give yourself a lot of context. Just understand the why things are the way. Back up and say, oh, there's something I'm missing here because it's much higher level. Just tell me about why we even do this in general. Oh, that's a good question. Well, we do this because, and then kind of like work your way backwards if you need to get to that level of context where you can really understand why we're doing what we're doing. And that'll help you, make the right decisions and ask better questions to get to that level of detail that you need. So yeah, asking a lot of questions, and then just know that you're going to struggle a bit, and that's a good thing. And, it's going to be like, you're going to jump out there and somebody's going to give you an assignment and there will be no instructions. So, you'll just have to create them on the way. So but that's just a part of it. Yeah. And it's very rewarding.
Great. So as you reflect back, after being out in industry for anywhere, from 5 to 20 plus years, if you could go back, and tell I'm not going to go that far. Sorry. If you think back, what do you wish that you knew before you graduated as a business major?
The thing that I wish I knew sooner, eventually I got it, but you have to know what your value is, because your business is not going to say, well, you're doing so good, we're going to double or triple your salary. And so you need to know, do your homework. There's lots of places out there where you can go and see, but know your value as an employee, so that you can make sure that you have a rewarding career and are taken care of. That would be the biggest thing that I would tell myself 20 years ago.
That's a really good one. I would echo that. I would also say, don't feel like you have to know what your forever job is right out of school. Something that, I was stressing about was, I want to pick the, right job for me right away. And the reality is that you're going to change what you're going to do probably over and over throughout your career. And it's okay not to know what you want to do. You just need to know what the next best thing that you're going to do is, and then just go from there.
Yeah, I would say, I always say there's kind of like two types of people who know what they want to do. Some people do, and they're like, that's the thing, and I'm going to just now figure out how to get there. And they keep making decisions and training themselves and putting themselves in positions to move in that direction. I'm married to a person like that, so I know that those people exist. I'm on the side of, I'm just trying to figure it out, and opportunities will come my way and I'll try and take them, and that'll kind of guide me along. And that's worked out actually quite well in a lot of ways. I would say the one thing that I wish I knew is, and kind of learning as I'm going along, is that the really good opportunities will oftentimes come when you're not really ready for them. So be willing to kind of just do it. Living life situations, oftentimes career situations, might not feel like you're ready or it's right, but you gotta kind of just get out there, just do it.
All right. This next question, I'm gonna give you two ways to potentially approach this next question. And this is the last question I have, so I'll turn it back over to the students. So what I wrote coming in here as a question is, if you could go back to your undergraduate years and tell yourself one thing to help your career, what would it be? Or if there's one thing that you could go back as an undergraduate and do differently, what would have it been? So very similar, but go ahead and take either of those that you think is good.
I would have utilized more of my opportunities in just small, some of the jobs that I had while I was in college, or even in classes, to just to do some like side projects, right? To get some real world experience that I could use on my resume. I think, you might be working at, any given number of jobs, or you might be in a class. You have to kind of shape some of that experience into a way where you can say, this was what I was asked to do. I actually ended up doing this, and this was the outcome of what I did, and be able to put that into a scope of work that really feels like, yeah, it wasn't just an assignment. This was a real world experience, right? Because that's the thing, you can get some great skills here. What you're not going to have is 5 years of experience, right? You're going to see job resume after job listing after job listing asking for 5 years of experience, and definitely apply for those jobs. I would say that maybe that's one of the other things is, even if it doesn't look like you have all the qualifications, go for it. But, find ways to manipulate the opportunities that you have into creating real world experience, and then sell the shit out of it, right? That's what I would do.
I would network more. A lot of the best opportunities that I've had have been because, someone that knows someone that knows someone. And the more you network, the more of those opportunities you're going to have put in front of you. Sure, what is going to help you succeed and stay in job and move up. But sometimes it's nice to have, a colleague or someone that you met at a conference say, hey, we're looking for exactly someone like you. And if you sit in your hotel room and skip the networking event, it's not going to happen. And it's, I'm introvert through and through. I know there's at least one other of you here. So it's get out of your comfort zone, go out, meet people, come to the event afterwards, things like that.
Yeah, my answer is a combination of both of yours. I would say, take advantage of the opportunities that you have while you're here, which is all of the clubs and the activities and the networking, which is a difficult task to say for like an introvert or somebody who's shy, but it will pay dividends, later on. That famous saying of you regret the things that you didn't do, not the ones that you did. So I think that's definitely holds true. So you're already kind of doing it by showing up here. So you never know what that like small nugget is that you'll take with you, or the person that you'll meet that will get you to where you need to be.
Great. Thank you. So we've got a few more minutes for student questions. You guys have any more questions? Angie, we've got one down front here.
I'm a Pisces.
Hi, I'm Oscar Ramirez, and this may be a dumb question, but since I'm an accounting major, I was really interested in how information technology could streamline some processes in accounting, because I know one of you mentioned that briefly, and I would appreciate if you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, I don't have a deep understanding of the accounting function, or, all of the, the processes in it, but just at a high level, accounting is just a lot of calculations, right? And so a lot of those calculations are highly structured, right? You're doing, auditing is getting hugely automated, right? Just because the review as validation of information, right, is something that's quite repetitive, and is repetitive over a huge quantity of data, and is done all the time. And so that's what we're looking for with automation, right? We're looking for highly structured processes with a lot of data processing done consistently, like not just once, but a lot of times, right? So, and that describes a huge amount of accounting. And so probably one of the easiest parts of accounting is kind of like that validation, right? We call it swivel chair. So I'm checking one thing here, and then I'm going over and I'm checking the same thing here. A lot of that swivel chair activity between two types of systems, or between two windows, a lot of that is just being automated away, right? Because it doesn't need a human to do it, but we just do it because somebody in IT was too lazy to connect those two systems, right? So we have to have a person do it. So that kind of stuff is what's getting automated, and a lot of, just kind of at a high level.
This is not really directly related to your question, but I would say that even though you're not an information systems major, your role as in accounting is going to touch a lot of information systems. And so being Data literate is always going to be important, as well as understanding the why behind, your business process and finding the value in that.
We have at least a few different IS people at Schweitzer that their customer is finance. And so accounting functions and they're stay busy all the time. So again, not replacing people, but making their jobs easier.
Great. Any more questions?
Hi. So earlier you guys were talking about all the things that you can do in school to help you and the things you wish you had done. And there's a lot of opportunities at WSU that I want to take advantage of, but I don't have enough time and energy to take advantage of all of them. Do you guys have any advice for how you can pick what really matters to take advantage of?
What's your major? What field are you trying to get into?
Finance and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, clubs. I think those are great. I wish I had specific ones because I didn't do them and I should have, but man, the amount of access to people in industry, a lot of alumni are very engaged in the clubs. I don't think they meet so often that should be a huge drain on anyone's time. Just got to commit to being consistent, right? People who rule the world show up to the table, right? So just be there. And I think there's a lot of opportunity from the clubs now.
Especially if you're focused on the entrepreneur side, I would say the side projects might be something that you really want to focus on. Choose, one or two that you're really passionate about. Maybe that's the business plan competition, but this is the time to really experiment, fail fast, because you've got a good soft landing space for you.
I'd say, follow the passion, whatever is appropriate there. I'd also say work on something that you're able to answer the question. Tell me about a project that succeeded and tell me about a project that failed. Those are just bookmark interview questions that you're going to get. So.
Great. Any more questions?
Hi, it's Molly again. I thought just because we have been talking about AI so much, I feel like makes most sense to at least have one question today from AI. So I did ask AI to ask a question. So I was just wondering, in terms of talent acquisition and retention, what qualities or skills do you look for in tech professionals or just tech students who are trying to get into the industry to ensure that they are a good fit for your organization? And I guess kind of going off of that with us more specifically is what can we do right now to get those skills?
Two things. Willingness to learn. Well, grit. Grit's really hard to define, but there's a wonderful book out there I think called Grit. So those are the two things that top of the list every time we can.
I know really, really good developers to know that I'm not one. And those people have incredible grit. And if I had to define that, it's someone who's willing to hit their head against a wall until it just magically opens up. They're puzzle solvers, right? They're willing to just try the same thing over and over again with small little incremental bits of difference. And they just keep going and they just keep going and going. They never end. Those people, they're usually become very technical and they're usually incredibly successful at what they do. I think that from a technology perspective, I think is something, it's kind of like stamina, right? You just have to keep trying. And I think that really goes a long way in a technology job. Yeah.
Yeah. And notice how none of us said a specific software or technology. It really does come back to willingness to learn and have you proven that you can learn something. So oftentimes it's more, have you proven that you've learned something, some programming language, some technology. And often employers are looking for a good culture fit instead of, the hard technical skills, because oftentimes you can learn any technology given enough time. It's more of looking for the positive attitude, the team player, the good communicator. Can you communicate your ideas to different audiences? And those are all things that business majors are well positioned for.
All right. Got a question in the back area, and we also have another one here in the front.
All right. So my name is Grant, and I was wondering, as far as this is a question for the whole panel, and I was curious as to whether you'd recommend working for a smaller company or a larger company out of the get-go, and what would be the pros or cons for both of those, and why?
I would say it's difficult to say. It really is like a personality fit. I would say there's not a yet right or wrong answer to that question. I would say the pros and cons are a large organization usually has a lot of structure around how to kind of shape and mold you into a highly productive member of their organization. I mean, you probably would become a highly productive or member of most organizations given their training models, but theirs specifically. And so there's a lot of structure in it, especially as you're coming out of school, and academia is a highly structured type of institution, right? With ladders and helping you kind of know how you're moving and benchmarking. So having that as you get out of school might help you in a lot of ways. And for some people, I feel like they actually really need that, and they struggle in smaller, very ambiguous environments. But some people thrive in that kind of just gray space of, hey, just figure it out. Like if you're in a small company, you're just going to have to be, scrappy, for lack of a better term, and, using what you have and trying to figure things out and duct taping things together. And that can be a lot of fun. For some people, that's, they just want to do stuff. They don't want to be told that's someone else's job, right? Because in a large organization, you have a very focused role, and that's just somebody else's job, right? So, it just really depends on the type of person, I think.
Right out of school, I'd probably say small company, high risk, high reward. But as you age and get closer to the magical retirement age, you want less risk. And so you're probably more apt to be in the larger company where there's more structure, that's not going to necessarily easily go under, and there's more guardrails. It's just for me. It's kind of a personal question.
Yeah, I would just echo what both of them said. Again, depends on what you're looking for in a company. Are you looking to have a lot of autonomy, a lot of room for growth, wear multiple hats, problem solve, try a small company versus, you really like that structure, organization, maybe having the resources to learn or attend conferences or things like that. Or, try on a lot of different types of roles within the same organization. Go larger organization.
Great. Any more questions?
Hi, my name is Colton. I was wondering what makes someone stand out on a resume rather than degree, what makes someone stand out?
Yeah. What is that secret word they need to put in that resume?
I actually don't look at the degree as much, to be honest. When I'm reviewing resumes, it's especially for a student looking at what projects have you done, what other outside experience do you have, and whether that's working at the pizza place or doing volunteer work. It's the what else beyond going to class have you done?
Well put together, concise. I saw someone do like a Yelp scale on their resume once, and I really it stuck out. So whatever you can do to stand out. I don't need to know that you're proficient with Windows 98. That still ends up on resumes. So those kinds of things. So it needs to be neat and tidy and stand out from the others. But again, if you can't be concise, I don't need to know every single programming language that you've been familiar with. I need to know that you're, again, have the ability to learn, it's not Visual Basic anymore. Show me that you can.
Yeah, I would echo that. And I would say, that similar to like Windows, or knowing Excel, which is great. You should know Excel. But like things like a great communicator or team player, it's like, how do I know that about you? And how can you prove that to me? And unless we've worked together for like a year, right? I don't think there's any way that even in an interview that you could prove to me that you're a good team player. Things like, because of me, this happened. That stuff stands out on a resume. What are the ways that you've been able to impact an organization or a team? And because of you, an impact, like an outcome happened. That's the stuff that really stands out. And if you're able to especially put a number next to something, whether that's it, because of me, I think we were able to reduce the amount of time it took by 6 months, or because of me, we generated this much extra value, right? Like, how do you create value specifically? And being able to show the outcomes from your interaction as a part of that process or whatever it was, I think is imperative, because otherwise there's really nothing that you can convince me of until we've worked together for some stretch of time and I've been able to actually see you at, doing what you do. But I think tangible outcomes are something that definitely you can kind of hang your hat on.
Great. Thank you. More questions. So Angie, after that one, we have a gentleman in the third row here as well.
Thank you. I'm a MIS and finance major. My question pertained to be, is there anything that stands out between employers, between what you see that your competitors are doing for either MIS and finance, that are getting people maybe hired at other places or poached from your companies that you may work at a competitor potentially, if that's okay?
I see a normal level of churn. I think there's things at Schweitzer that really makes people excited to work there and stay there. I think there's other things that people choose to leave. Remote work being one of those. With the pandemic, there's a lot of people that work full-time from home or wherever. And they really like that. If that's not an option, like it wasn't after the pandemic, kind of eased up, then, that's something they're going to pursue. I think Schweitzer's right. I think the person's right. And they agree to part ways. But I think someone asked earlier, interview, Schweitzer will grade half of your interview on what you know and how you answer questions, and the other half is, are they a Schweitzer fit? And that's just like, being a team player, living to work hard, things like that.
Yeah, I think, the people that are getting poached by other companies usually have a very strong skill set in something, which is why they're highly desirable. And, if you want to be that kind of person, you need to be fostering a really strong skill set in something specifically. And, if you don't know what that thing is, that's fine. You don't have to learn that now. If you do know what that thing is, go all in, right? Because I think what we get excited about is when somebody's excited about something, right? It's like, I love Tableau. Great. We love you and we love Tableau too. Come work for us, That's what we get excited about. As far as office environments, things, remote work, I'll just echo that. I think that's a big thing for a lot of organizations. Some are putting their foot down as far as wanting in person, and that doesn't work for some people. And some people want more of it, and the organization's not putting their foot down about it, and they want to be part of teams. So, definitely there's a shift happening in that way. But, I would say the job market is kind of cooled a little bit. And I think people are, I think the thing that I've seen most recently that's made it difficult for some people is companies are trying to do more with less. So they're asking their employees to be a little bit more flexible. Like, hey, we really need some extra support over here. Can you also do this? And people that are saying, no, I can't because that's not what I do and that's not what you hired me to do, are struggling to stay in those companies. And people that are like, yeah, of course, I love learning new things. They're doing great. So I would say flexibility. You're all our students. You're already super flexible. So that shouldn't be a problem for you right now, but that's kind of what I'm seeing.
Yeah. I would just speak to in general, why do people leave companies? I would say first and foremost, money talks. Usually it's an economic decision. If another company is paying higher or they have shares to give you, and it's the same work, why wouldn't you leave? Or maybe the culture fit's not right, the pace of the company's not right, and you're looking for something different, or you're looking for a promotion, more responsibilities. So I think those are typically why people leave any given company, no matter the industry.
I'd throw in people leave bad managers, not bad jobs. Be a good manager, be a good employee.
Great. More questions. Got more in the back. All right. Lots of interest. I love this.
How's it going? My name is Bryce. You guys talked a little bit earlier about how AI and automation is being used to like cut down time and cut down like repetitious tasks. How could you guys see like different areas in your industry where like AI like hasn't touched or like can't touch, where like new hires should come in and like create value like pretty quickly?
I think sales is kind of, it's a people business. It's a relationship business. Sales is going to definitely, there will be a lot of parts of sales, like we were talking about, generating invoices or proposals, right? Being able to do that quicker and more personalized, and not needing to go to your marketing team to spin up some new logos for stuff. That will happen quicker, but relationship businesses, are going to stay relationship businesses because businesses are run by people and people aren't going away, right? So all of that relationship oriented stuff, I think is going to do just fine for quite a while from an AI perspective. Yeah.
I would echo that anything relationship based or trust based is likely not to be handed off to AI or a robot. I'd also say things that are core to the business will typically not be automated away. Things like evaluations, things that are more complex. And while we wish it, I wish it was automated. A lot of the like documentation generation's not quite there. Unfortunately, it has to be human done. So that's what I'd say.
The only thing I'd add, we talked about this, I think to death. I don't see AI replacing people or positions. I just think that you're going to have people that use that as another tool in just about every aspect. I don't see how it couldn't be. I think we're at the beginning, and it's hard to measure because to me, it's like the internet. Like my kids grew up, they didn't know a world without the internet. It's kind of a big leap in technology like that, but we're still at the beginning of it. So it's going to impact everything.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, my name is Kyla. I am an accounting and management informations major. I recently had an internship where I did delve into some technical processes, and I had a particular issue articulating my ideas and developing interpersonal relationships with those around me. Do you have any tips for me or people like me?
I'd tell you, keep going. I think that's a them problem, not a you problem. The most attractive or important or useful employees are the ones that constantly bring up ideas because they're coming at it from a different viewpoint, and that's hugely valuable.
I just keep putting meetings on people's calendars. If they say no, they say no. Like they'll say, hey, look, I don't have time for this. But no one's going to say, no, I don't have time for you, right? They're not going to say, I'm not going to show up to a meeting. But you get, put a flag in the sand, say, hey, I want to talk to you about something here. They'll show up. You'll be prepared, just make sure to articulate your ideas. But I would say that's kind of the simple thing. And like, believe it or not, that's how so much business gets driven. That's how so many projects keep pushing forward, is we just keep putting meetings on people's calendars. And that's a forcing function, right? We just have to keep moving forward. We have to keep meeting. We have to keep getting things done. That's what I would say. Yeah.
And it may not have been because the idea was bad. It might have been just timing was off. Like they didn't have budget, or they were prioritizing other things because that's what their leadership said. But I would also say another good tip is understand who your audience is, understand what they think is important. What are their big goals and objectives? What is their leadership telling them that they need to do? And once you can, think from their perspective, then you tailor your messaging to really hit home of what do they find valuable.
Great. We have time for one more question. Was there one more question up there, Angie?
Hi, excuse me. Hi, I'm Jackson. I'm an electrical engineering and cybersecurity major. I was wondering what kind of data do you work with on a day-to-day basis, and how do you analyze that data to do your job better?
That is a fantastic interview question. So it's going to vary. I would say, what data don't we deal with? And it's going to depend on your role as well. But the most predominant data is probably going to be in the form of emails and conversations, honestly, just in the day-to-day. But, lately, for me, it's been some analysis with our team skills and, upcoming industry trends. What are the things that we need to stay relevant on, and how do we get there quickly has been something relevant for me recent.
Day to day, I have job tickets that I look at, what am I going to do today? And usually I think about it before I get to the office, and it's rarely what I get to work on that day. But it's just the way things are. But we'll have projects, small, medium, and large, or quick, or things that take months to do, and you kind of just chip away at those things. And we have other people that look at big data and produce reports, and it's my job to facilitate the systems that can automate or do other things. And so I'm looking at was the acceptance criteria written right for this project that I'm working on, and who are the responsible parties? And then that helps me either assign to my team or take on the task myself to go through and get that right. And then where needed, make corrections or go ask questions about something that's unclear.
Yeah, I mean, unstructured data is what we all like. We're just being inundated with a lot of unstructured data, and by that I mean like emails and documents and visual information, voice. But yeah, other than that, it's probably just it's not going to sound exciting, but it's just a lot of project tracking, right? We're just trying to keep tabs on where we are, statuses, backlogs of in my space right now, it's a lot of opportunity assessment of different automation opportunities and technologies and how we're assigning value to those. So trying to create structure is more or less what I'm doing, for the most part, which is there's not already structured data. We're trying to take kind of this nebulous idea around project or some kind of outcome and then create a structure so that we can understand how are we going to track it, right? How are we going to understand? How are we going to inventory it, right? And so, but that's not, and that's kind of, that it varies a lot across different organizations, different engagements.
What kind of answer were you looking for? Because I feel like none of those were probably the answer.
All right, great. Well, I thank everybody for all the great questions. It was as we put this together, we had plenty of room for student questions, and that makes me nervous. But you guys came through in spades, and I really, really appreciate it. So let's give the students a round of applause for bringing such great questions. And before we leave, I wanted to say thank you to our panelists, and I've got some bags here. There's light I could see. All right, so a little gift for you guys for taking the time to meet with us. We greatly appreciate it. And you're welcome. Thank you. And let's go ahead and give our panelists a round of applause to say thank you. All right. And as you guys sneak out of here, remember to scan your card so you get credit for the amplifier. And we'll be around for a few minutes if you wanted to say hi or ask something you didn't get to ask. Take a minute to do that, please.